Hi, welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm your host, Karen Stevens, and today we'll be discussing sustaining a career in the arts. But before I introduce our guest, let me introduce our panelists. Miss Iris Acker, actress and producer of Spotlight on the Arts, journalist and theater critic, Mr. Bill Hirschman, actor and public relations director for Zoetic Stage, Mr. Nicholas Richburg. And I'm very, very pleased to announce our guest, or introduce to you our guest, actress, singer, Miss Avery Sommers. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are a longtime friend of mine.
Yes.
And I love you to death. I've admired you for so many years. So would you please start out by telling our television audience a little bit about your background, a little bit about yourself?
Wow, a little bit about myself. I'm from South Florida. I was raised in West Palm Beach. I went through high school here. My parents both taught school, so I had the pleasure or the displeasure of having them teach me at a time when that was okay to do, because you can't do that now. But it was a joy to grow up in West Palm Beach. It was very small. You could throw a bowling ball down the alley and not hit a single thing, but that's not true now. I went away from here and went to Los Angeles. I had an older sister that you may have heard about. I don't know whether you ever met Betty or not.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Betty Waldron.
Betty Waldron was my sister. And she went to Los Angeles and she was very excited. And she said, somebody's got to come out here and see the mountains and see the ocean and see the desert. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I went out there and I fell in love. And I stayed. And she said, all right, if you're going to be here, then you need to go do something. You need to study. You need to, decide what you want to do with your life, with your career. So I did. I studied voice, and I studied dance, and I studied acting and everything. And then I got a lot of work as a result of that. I went to New York and started working. So I wound up back here because it was time. It was time to sort of let myself calm down and get back to being home where I love everybody.
And you started singing in church.
I did.
Is that not right?
I was 5. I think a lot of us were 5 when we started singing. But I really was. When I was growing up here in West Palm Beach, at that time, they would always encourage all the kids to do Easter speeches and Christmas pageants, and you had to do something, even if it was Jesus wept, you had to say something. So my mother said, get up, baby, and sing. And it was like, okay, and I started to sing, and I decided I wanted to be paid, so I had to have my sister give me a nickel that I could hold on to while I sang. That was my first job, and but yes, I started out in the Baptist church.
We have a clip of you singing,
okay.
And I'd like to roll that.
All right.
It's of you. It's an evening with Black artists featuring you,
yes.
And you're singing "Soon I Shall Be Done with the
Troubles
of the World,"
World.
a very, very well-known Negro spiritual.
Yes.
We're going to
yes.
roll that.
All right. Thank you. to live with my
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. As usual.
Thank you so
As
much.
usual.
Thank you.
Avery, how do you do it all? The transition from cabaret to theater to gospel, switching, Broadway, touring. I'm overwhelmed.
I am too.
But you have a secret. You have a secret. Let's share it.
Gosh, I don't know, Iris. I don't think there's a secret. I think you just have to decide what it is that really makes you excited about life and about what you want to do, and then follow that. You know, I was always excited about doing theater, always. But when I came home, I was really kind of burned out because I had done major tours, which was really wonderful, done Broadway. Not that I wouldn't again, but I had already done that, and I've always wanted to do cabaret, because I say I like to stand in the crook of a piano in a pretty gown and sing the way I want to sing when I want to sing.
And, I mean, and you can sing, and you're known for your powerful voice, and you've toured, you've sustained long runs. I have a lot of young friends in the business, as I'm sure you do, and something that comes up over and over is vocal health and being able to sustain 8 shows a week, or like you do, sing for an hour or 2 at a time without stopping. What can you say about, what do you do? What works for you to maintain your vocal health?
I go home and go to sleep at night.
Right? That's the best advice.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
I take care of myself. I go home, I go to sleep. I don't drink, I don't smoke. Not that that's anybody else's business, but I just don't do that. But I realize that I need a lot of quiet time.
Do you do warm-ups? I mean,
I do.
I know that sounds dumb, but there are some vocalists who in fact somehow manage to get through without ever doing any vocal warm-ups before they do a show.
I do about 30 minutes of vocal warm-ups before I get to the theater, and I hum all day.
And how do you approach these different worlds, or are they not different to you? The cabaret and stage and singing in church. Do you bring a different mindset to any of them?
No, not really. I think the mindset is the same. It's just with theater, I feel that I'm doing someone else's work. Always, and you know that we're all theater people here, and you know you're doing someone else's. When I do my cabaret, I write my shows myself, so I put in the songs that I love. I write my own words around them, better known as patter. And so I feel very, very comfortable with doing that. It's very interesting. The least comfortable place for me is singing gospel music,
Really?
because that's not what I did for all these years. My mom used to say, if you want to be successful, you'll sing gospel music. And I went, no, I don't want to do that.
Mama was right.
And she was right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So touring on Broadway, what was that like, being at the age that you were, having that opportunity?
It was a good opportunity. I don't think that I really grasped the excitement and the importance of it. I was doing a show, and we were turned into a concert because of conflicts with rights. So we could not relate to each other on stage or any of that. And so it became quite a different process, something very different. And then I decided, well, I think I'll just backpack across Europe instead. And that's what I did. I stayed and I hooked on with some friends, and we wandered around Europe, London, Paris, everywhere, just on our own. Very adventurous. My mother was having a fit. Where are you and what are you doing? Because there were no cell phones at that time, so it was a very expensive long distance call to say, I'll call you back, Well,
if you had young Avery sitting at your feet today, what advice can you give her about, here's what I learned, here are the mistakes that I shot myself in the foot, and here are some things that somehow I managed to do right. Give her some advice.
Oh gosh, that's, I think probably continue to study. I studied a lot. I've studied quite a bit, and I think it's just important to continue to study. And I don't think I missed many of those opportunities. I was very fortunate because I did have my sister, and she was a taskmaster. about that. Study, know what you're doing, know what you're saying, know where you're going, no. So it was a very important thing for me to do that. And she had a theater that when I came back here and I thought I was just going to sit around and do nothing, she said, oh, no. No. You're going to choose a play, you're going to choose your actors, you're going to, everything that had to do with a piece, I had to do it. Sets, lights, costume, I had to do everything. So I think it's just continue to hone your craft.
You said something that you were burned out. Touring, and I've toured.
Yes.
And I know, and 6 months was the longest I toured. I couldn't do more than that. It's so hard to explain. There's so much more than just being on stage.
Yes.
When you're on Broadway, it's the easiest.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Discuss
So
that.
how to talk
Specify
about
that.
that?
Well,
Talk about touring.
We
What's
toured. I did
involved?
18 months back to back of the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, which was absolutely a joy to do, and Chicago, which was a joy to do. They were both wonderful, but very difficult because right in the middle of all of that, 9/11 happened. And I toured with my animal, and I know a lot of us have animals. Well, I toured with my animal. Now it came to the time when you had to stand in those hour and 2 hour lines. Then you had to take the animal out of the carrier, and he was now frightened to death, and they put the carrier through. Well, finally he got to the point where he even couldn't stand it anymore. He did. I mean, he almost freaked out once, and so I said, I think I need to go sit down and let my animal calm down. But the touring part of it is you get to, say, Minneapolis, and it's freezing cold. And anybody knows me, after 79 degrees, I need a jacket and earmuffs and a scarf, And it was just it was so much to get to a city on Monday, have that night off, and hit the ground running on Tuesday, straight through Sunday, travel again, get to another city, and seriously, you begin to wake up and go, where
am I? Have you done that too?
Yes.
Got up in the morning, I wonder what city we're in.
What
Where
city
am I
in? Yes.
You mentioned Chicago. You played Mama Morton on
I
that
did.
tour, is that right?
Yes, I
and
did.
And for a time, Joel Grey and Cheetah
Yes,
Rivera
and Cheetah
were on
Rivera.
at the same time?
Yes, absolutely.
Give us the dirt. What was that like?
Well, there really wasn't.
Yeah.
Not when I did the show, although when I left, there was a lot of dirt. But they were both lovely, really, really lovely.
Joel
Cheetah.
was recently in the news. He's as coming out as a gay man at the age of 82. As somebody who toured with him and got to know him a little bit, what are your thoughts on his timing and his decision to do that at his age?
That's his life. I don't have any judgments about what anyone wants to do with their life. It's important to be, I think, who you are, and whether it takes to get to be 80 or whether you find out at 12 or 15 that this is what I need to do or want to do, I think that's fine. He was a joy. He kept us regaled with stories of years ago, and so it was a joy. It was a real joy.
I find it fascinating when you're talking about Cheetah Rivera, and I think of Barbara Cook and other people who have managed to keep their careers active to a certain degree in their 80s. Is that a paradigm that is more common or less common now, in which someone who has the talent and takes care of their voice can continue through their 60s and 70s?
Absolutely. I think so.
How does that work?
Well, I don't know how it works.
Tony Bennett.
Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tony Bennett's son, sort of saved his career,
Yes.
so to speak, because he said, okay, I think you need to work with younger people. That's going to get you into the public again, These people don't know you now, so he brought them along, and it's been marvelous. And I think for me, knowing that we were talking about doing 8 shows a week, I don't particularly care to do that anymore.
I was wondering, yeah.
Right, I really don't. I lobbied hard for Hairspray because I really wanted to do that.
That was at Actors Playhouse.
Yes,
Right.
I love that show, and I lobbied hard to do that show, and I got it, and it was great. And then after that, I thought, okay, fine, now I can go back to doing my cabaret. Well, I'm getting ready to do Menopause the Musical.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Again. Again. And
Are you going to
again.
tour with it as well?
No, ma'am.
No
No.
fool.
It's going to sit at the Kravis for 3 weeks, I think, and that's going to be about it
Yeah.
for me. So,
So, you know, on a realistic level, you know, there's not a plethora of roles, you know, and
Yes.
opportunities available for
Right.
actors of color.
yes.
How have you managed that throughout your career as far as making opportunities for yourself or finding opportunities for yourself?
Well, that's where the Cabaret came in. You know, when I came back here in 2007, I did the circuit of auditions. I went around to every theater and you know, either said hello or I sang or I read or did a monologue or whatever was necessary. And everyone was very excited. Oh, I'm so glad you're back. And then crickets. You know? And so I thought, okay, well, I've always written down things, so let me collect my papers, see what I've got, and find out where I want to go. And when I hooked into Cabaret as something that I could sustain myself with, it was like eureka. You know, I found it, and I'm really glad.
Yeah.
So I don't go out. I don't even go to auditions anymore. That's just on me.
So you feel like you
Teaching,
made.
I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think, aren't you teaching now?
Well, I did for the last 2 seasons. I taught at Burt Reynolds. I taught voice.
But that's it?
It's it for right now because I've become very busy.
Good for you.
Yes,
But
yes.
are you teaching what? Cabaret singing?
Cabaret singing, cabaret
Yeah.
style.
Can you actually teach that?
Well, I think you can teach. I taught how to. It became very interesting because a lot of people don't know how to introduce themselves, how to walk into a room, how to, you know, there are lots of little how-tos that we learn over the years on what to do with oneself or your hands, for instance. The hands become a thing all to themselves and they go wandering off. And I always liken it unto, you know, waffling. People waffle from one foot to the other and I cannot stand that. So I make them make a choice on something and then stick to it, and you know, things like that. It was a very popular class, very popular class.
With you, it is.
I want to go back to the idea of making because it seemed like you were saying to Karen's question about the challenges of being a black woman in the business, that it
Yes.
was about making your own work.
Yes.
And this is maybe a question for both of you. You know, the Oscars were recently, and it was called the whitest Oscars, you know, in recent history. And it just, the question always seems to come up, really, like, as an African American in the arts, like aside from making your own work, how do you find a challenge, or have you just found a niche? Is it do you find challenges or a path?
I think I found a niche.
Yeah.
I really do. I rarely see things as an issue. I see things as a positive always, and then I can go from there. You know, if there's no work, they say, then I know how to fix it. Do my own thing,
Right.
you know.
Smart.
And I've been very, very fortunate to find a place to do what I love to do and do it.
You were Carbonyl Winner
Yes.
for a one-woman show at
Yes.
Caldwell Theater called But Not For Me.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, it was a story that I brought to Michael Hall, who was the theater manager there and the production manager, and he said, okay, well then let's just figure this out. And he was all about writing everything down. So we took months to write it. I would say it, and then they would write it. And then it was like, okay, then they wrote it, and I said, well, that doesn't talk. It doesn't talk. It's not what I'm saying. It's not how I want to say this. And so then we'd go back, and then we'd lay everything out on the floor and look at it and say, okay, where should this go and where should that go? And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And Michael Hall is just a joy. If you know him, you know he's a real joy to work with. And we laid it all out, and then we put it together. And then we had a lot of rehearsal of me saying my own words. Because if you think you know what you just said, you don't. We wrote a script. It was really wonderful. And Dana Rowe was my musical director.
Wow.
And just a joy. And so we put the show together, and it hit all the marks, quote unquote, over the weekend. The first weekend, there was return business, which is what everybody wants. And so it became quite a show that everybody wanted to see. But, you know, I had my sister in it, and because they were looking for real people, and she was an actress and I was the real person. So, that, you know, that made her happy. And, you know, things like that. But it also included, it was called But Not For Me because I could not use all of Gershwin's song. They're writing songs of love, but not for me. You can only use, so I used But Not For Me. But it really was about those times when there was nothing for me. So I created my own there again, you know. And I didn't really understand Carbonyls or any of that sort of thing. I didn't know what that all meant. So we were just invited to a party, I thought. And then they called my name, and I nearly lost. I mean, you know, when you say you can't see or you can't hear, it's true. I couldn't see or hear. I was like, oh my God, you know. Well, you know. So,
you just do a pirouette.
yeah. That is, if you could do a pirouette, you can.
Well, Avery, I've seen your cabaret act. I
Yes.
saw it at the Caldwell Theater, but it was the Wick Theater already. You had tables set up in the lobby.
Yes.
Actually. And it was your life, wasn't it?
Yes.
Your life in song.
Yes.
It was lovely. It
Thank
was
you.
just lovely.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank
And,
you.
People, the audience really enjoys that. They
Yes.
like to know as much about the performer as possible.
They love stories, you know, all the stories of the people that you've worked with, or if you ran into. I love a story. I was first in New York and very new there, and after we opened Platinum with Alexis Smith, I got a call from an agent and said, we want you to come to our office. We were on 57th Street. Well, at first I had to find 57th Street because I didn't know what that was. And looking at all the buildings, and they were all so tall. Finally, I found my building, and I went in, and I went to the elevator, and I'd never seen that many numbers on an elevator before. And I found my way in, and I got shoved into the elevator with everybody else and stood there like this. And when I got to my floor, I looked this way, and there was nobody, and I looked that way and ran right into Tommy Tune. If you know Tommy Tune,
then you
he's
looked up.
this.
You look like that.
And, you know, ran right into his navel, and that was. But he was very gracious, and but it's one of those things about going to New York. When I first went to New York, I was not frightened of New York. I was excited, and couldn't wait to get there and be there and all that, and then finally, it just became too many people on the street. You know.
Did you do Cabaret in New York, or was
I
that
did
something
not.
you did when you came back here?
Here.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious. There are days when most people go to work,
Yes.
and even when they love their work,
Yes.
that the alarm clock rings, they've had a rough night, and they go, I don't know what's going to get me to go to work today besides that I have to pay bills. I get the sense that you either don't have that problem or there is something burning inside you that has kept you going this many years through the tough times you were talking about. What keeps you going? What is it that drives you?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things, but just my love of singing. I don't want to use this as a platform for anything, but I truly believe in God. And I just thank him every day for every moment that he gives me. So I don't want to ever feel like I've let him down by being, angry or any of that. So I wake up with a big old smile on my face, and if I can sing, I'm good.
Wow. So if there is some advice that you could give to young performers, some of the pitfalls to avoid, some of the things to aspire to, what would that be?
That's a broad.
Yeah, so it's just like
In a minute. In like a minute.
In like a minute. Oh, I don't know. As I said, I am an advocate of studying. I think that's very important. To take care of yourself is very important, and to really try to figure out where you fit, where you really, really fit. Because I think what we do as performers is, if someone says, can you do this? Yes. Can you do that? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. And after a while, I think that's where the burnouts can happen, because we spread ourselves too thin. So I think that it's important to be able to really, really identify who you are and what you can do, and then sort of work that. That's my short answer. It's more involved, but that's my short answer.
Maybe you've had a lifetime of singing. When you're alone at home and you're just singing for yourself and you close your eyes and you're humming, what song is that? What song do you just hum that makes you feel home, maybe back in that church back when you were 5 years old?
Oh gosh, one of my mother's favorite tunes was Blue Moon.
Really?
So I hum that a lot because, you know, she's not with me anymore in the physical sense. But, you know, every once in a while she pops into my mind and I just start singing Blue Moon. 'Cause that
And
was
who
her
do you
favorite.
admire most? Which singer?
Beside yourself.
Where do you go? I wish I could do that.
Oh yes. Oh,
Yeah.
Ella Fitzgerald.
There you go.
Without a doubt.
Yes.
Ella. Because when I hear people say they are scat singers, I'm sorry.
That's
I
right.
don't think so.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, too. It's how whenever we hear anyone scatting, we automatically compare it to Ella.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, she has
set that
become
bar.
she has set the bar
Yes,
for
she did.
scatting.
Yes, yes.
Well, Avery, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a
It's
pleasure.
always a pleasure.
Thank
You
you.
know, I love you.
Yes.
And thank you for the example that you set, you know, not only for, you know, others in the theater community, but for me, because, you know, I've known you for a long time, and, you know, I aspire to do some of the things that you do. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome.
And thank you to our panelists
Yes.
today.
Thank you all very much.
And thank you for joining us today in Spotlight on the Arts. If you'd like to know what's going on in the theater community around South Florida, please visit floridatheateronstage.com and join us here again next week for another version of Spotlight on the Arts.